The Magi, the wise men, were key people in ancient society. They were skilled in observing the stars and interpreting them, and they were high-class fortune tellers. And we have records in ancient literature of these people going to Nero, and they also went to Herod in about 10 BC, and they would have predicted the future and have been very well paid for this. So they would have been very high-standing people in their societies. Archaeologists discovered these clay tablets about 30 miles north of Babylon, and on these clay tablets it actually describes this triple conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in the sky in 7 BC. It appears to be a prediction that this was going to occur, and the astronomers were that good they could predict these things. It meant it was really important to them, or else they wouldn't have written it down.
Following the comet from Babylon would have taken the Magi along part of the Middle Eastern trade route known as the Fertile Crescent. Skirting the Arabian desert, their journey to Judea would have taken them less than a month. The Magi arrived in the Holy Land, but instead of heading straight for Bethlehem, they went to Jerusalem. Perhaps they expected to meet the Son of God here, because it was the capital. Or maybe they visited the palace to make a courtesy call on Herod. According to Matthew, they asked Herod, "Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east and have come to worship him." As far as Herod was concerned, there already was a King of the Jews. Him.
It could well be that they did stop off in Jerusalem on the way to seeing this child in Bethlehem, and if they did tell tales of things that they'd seen in the stars, prophecies that they felt were going to come true, then it could have aroused the jealousy of a king like Herod.
Herod told them to go, and when you have found the child, bring me word that I too may come and worship him.
What they didn't know, and it's the irony of the story, is that Herod would not receive them with joy, but would actually do everything he possibly could to subvert their mission.
Leaving Herod, who was already planning Jesus' death, the Magi traveled on to Bethlehem, still following their peculiar star that heralded Jesus' birth.
And as they were travelling to Bethlehem, Matthew's Gospel says they saw the star ahead of them, and this star stood over the place where Christ was born. And the only star which can do that, stand over a place, is a comet with a very long tail, because the tail of the comet points the head of the comet to a particular spot.
In 1858, a long-tailed comet stood directly over buildings in Paris. Could this have been what the Star of Bethlehem looked like as the Magi approached?
This comet that did appear is described in the Chinese records of the time, and they describe a very long-tailed comet which appeared in 5 BC, and I believe that is the Star of Bethlehem. It's the only astronomical possibility.
So can astronomical records give us a date for the comet, and perhaps a more accurate idea of when Jesus was born?
We know from the Chinese records this star occurred in the spring of 5 BC, not Christmas time. I actually think he was probably born around Passover time, because the Gospels say there was no room at the inn. And we know at Passover time all males in Israel had to come to Jerusalem for the Passover, and they didn't have places to live, so they'd live in the outlying places like Bethlehem, and I think that's why there was no room at the inn. And so I think that all fits together as well. So I think April 5 BC.
Gold is what you give to kings, to great ones, but it also has a meaning in magic. It is the pure thing that every practitioner of magic hopes to create. Incense is used in temples. The reason was quite practical in the ancient world because there was a lot of blood around, and blood smells awful in large quantities, so large amounts of incense would cover the smell of the sacrificial blood of animals. Myrrh is the strangest one. Myrrh is usually used, it's either used as an anaesthetic, as a painkiller, or it's used on dead bodies. It's a sort of form of preservative, but it also acts to cut out the smell of decay. You can't imagine today if a child was born in a sort of shanty town in a poor part of the world that the President of the United States would turn up presenting riches that nobody had ever dreamed of.